As fears of a wider regional war across the Middle East grow, could Iran's nuclear sites be in Israel's crosshairs? And with the region witnessing its most pressing security challenges in decades, is it time for Türkiye to rethink its policies regarding nuclear weapons? I'll break it all down here on Strait Talk. Hello and welcome to Strait Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. As the Middle East inches towards a full-blown regional war, is a nuclear threat looming over the horizon? Fears are growing that Israel could target Iran's nuclear facilities in response to a barrage of missiles Tehran launched back on October 1st. Iran says such a response would cross a red line, while U.S. President Joe Biden said he would not support such a strike by Israel. For years, Tehran has said its nuclear program is entirely peaceful. In 2015, Iran made a deal with world powers to limit its nuclear projects in return for sanctions relief. After the U.S. withdrew from the agreement in 2018, Iran restarted enriching uranium at higher levels. And now the world waits on what Israel's response to Iran's missile attacks could be. Some analysts warn that an Israeli strike on its nuclear sites could prompt Tehran to pursue an atomic bomb. Saudi Arabia has warned it would also develop nuclear arms as well if Iran does so. Could those developments push Türkiye to reconsider its own nuclear policy? For more, joining me now from Istanbul is Ivan Starodubtsev. He's a political analyst. From Ankara, Murat Yeşiltaş. He's the director of foreign policy research at SETA. And from Washington, D.C., Luke Coffey. He's a senior fellow at Hudson Institute. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me now. A lot to talk about, a big nuclear threat, a growing nuclear threat, an October 1st counterattack by Iran against Israel. Could this spark an Israeli attack against Iran's nuclear facilities? Luke, what are your thoughts on this?
Yusuf, thanks for having me on. It's great to see you. Of course, it seems that Israel will retaliate in some way. How they will do so, what the target set will be, remains really the only question. I think that we'll see a number of targets being hit, probably focused on some of the commercial activity of the Iranian state, mainly dealing with the energy sector. But if the Israelis choose to target the Iranian nuclear research facilities, that might be easier said than done. I think people have this wrong idea that a single strike could take out Iran's nuclear program. And in reality, for this to be effective, we would have to see a sustained air campaign that would be measured by days, not hours. And while some of the facilities could be easily hit, some of the other facilities like Fordo are hardened facilities that I'm not sure if the Israelis have the capabilities to destroy. So at the end of the day, it might be easier and more effective for Israel to continue its covert program of taking out nuclear scientists that are helping Iran's nuclear program. That might be a more effective way to impact the nuclear capabilities of Iran. But symbolically, of course, seeing a strike on some of the facilities would mean a lot internationally as well.
Ivan, now, if Iran's nuclear facilities were hit, would this push Iran towards getting nuclear weapons? Because up till now, they've said that their program is entirely peaceful and for energy purposes.
The fact that they said that their program is totally peaceful, we have to realize one simple thing, that they come very much close to the border to have nuclear weapon. By border, what do I mean? Two things. First of all, to have nuclear bomb, let me call it in this way. And another one is to have a missile just to deliver this to a target. What we will see from the latest strike of Iran to Israel is that they got possibility to deliver whatever they want to deliver to Israel. This is the main result. So somehow they are in the border. And already again, I just would like a bit comment the previous question which you asked. Actually, what we do see from Israel experts in Russia when they write about Israel plans on Iran, they consider the current situation as a historical chance to stop this cursed, how Netanyahu called it, cursed axis in the region. Cursed axis in the region includes everything what is related to Iran. Syria, Iraq, also Hezbollah, also Hamas. So they consider it as historical chance. They don't think to stop at all. So I believe that Iran understands very much clearly what are the plans of Israel, and of course they got to make some conclusion. Conclusion is just to be as much close to this red border as possible, to be able to be nuclear weapon holder, just like that, whenever they need it.
Murat, now, if Iran develops nuclear weapons, that's already changing the security environment inside the Middle East. So MBS said if they get one, we have to get one. What are your thoughts on this changing security dynamic?
I think this is part of the nuclear logic from a theoretical perspective. Yes, an Iranian push toward nuclear weapons development, particularly in response to an Israeli strike, we will see the consequences of the Israeli strikes, could, I think, potentially compel Saudi Arabia to pursue its own nuclear weapons capability. So the security dynamics in the Middle East, characterized by rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran, mainly, would likely drive such a move. If Iran were to move toward acquiring nuclear weapons, I think Saudi Arabia would likely view this as a major shift in the regional balance of power, which would undermine its own strategic position. In 2018, as Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman explicitly stated, if Iran develops a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible. I think this public statements reflect Saudi Arabia's determination to maintain a strategic parity with Iran. It will absolutely change the nature of security architecture and the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, in which other countries will try to get a nuclear bomb.
I'm very happy that you said that, because I want to stay with you. I want to ask you another question. Other countries, does that mean Turkey should reconsider its nuclear policy?
I mean, yeah, it's a very difficult question. From this perspective, yes. But Turkey's nuclear policy currently focused on peaceful energy development, as you know, under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, could be re-evaluated given the evolving regional and global security environment. So there are, I think, several factors that might prompt Turkey to reconsider its stance, although any shift, I think, would also carry significant risk and broader geopolitical implications. So the number one driving factors would be about regional nuclear arms race. So this is going to be a strategic driver for Turkey to get a nuclear bomb. Of course, Israel has already a nuclear bomb, but Iran's nuclear program, if evolve towards having a nuclear bomb, probably Turkey will consider its stance about nuclear weapon. And of course, in terms of Turkey's evolving technological ambitions as part of its regional policy and global military posture, of course, Turkey will reconsider under these circumstances.
Luke, whenever a country talks about developing nuclear weapons, obviously it's a very provocative conversation, but Turkey is also in a very dangerous region of the world. Same question to you. Do you think Turkey should reconsider its nuclear policy, especially in the event that Iran and Saudi Arabia become nuclear armed?
Well, of course, as an American, I want to be very careful with what I say about this, because ultimately this situation, this matter is one that has to be decided by the Turkish people. But I do understand the increasing danger that is found in the region, and how Turkey, as a regional leader, can be concerned by geopolitical developments. Of course, Turkiye has the know-how. I mean, some of the world's brightest engineers and scientists are Turkish. There's no doubt that if Turkiye wanted to develop a nuclear weapon, it could. But the question remains, should it do so? I would say there are two issues here. One is the NPT, which was already mentioned by Murat. There is a way for a country to leave the NPT, but I've seen no indication from Turkiye that it has any desire to do so. Don't forget, countries like Israel, Iran, Pakistan, India, they're not in NPT, so they're not bound by the requirements and the obligations of that treaty. Mm-hmm. The second thing that needs to be considered is, how does this fit inside the NATO framework? Many forget that NATO is a nuclear alliance. It was founded in 1949 to be a nuclear alliance. There is an important component of burden sharing inside NATO with nuclear weapons. Although it's not publicly confirmed, it is thought that Turkiye plays an important role in this nuclear burden sharing. And I think right now, all things considered, the best route, the best route for Turkiye would be to focus on that aspect of NATO and enhance NATO's nuclear deterrence capabilities before taking the plunge and developing nuclear weapons itself. But like I said, ultimately, this is a decision for the people of Turkiye.
Ivan, same question to you. Should Turkey consider getting nuclear weapons? And before you answer this question, I do also want to point out that the Turkish president's policy on this matter is not to nuclear arm Turkey, that the nuclear development and steps towards nuclear energy are only peaceful right now. So we are talking hypothetically, but I want to get your thoughts on this as well.
Actually, I am forced again to start from the same wording, that I will not go so far to say what Turkey should do or may do in this respect. Just what I will express, it is just my humble opinion about this respect. Of course, there is a legal issue of this question, is like NPT of which Turkey is a part, of course, naturally. There is a logic of regional and global balances. There is technological dimension of this issue. And at the end, there is a issue of regional situation and possibility of Turkey to give adequate answer by itself. This is a question, again, just very much interesting, as the last speaker said, about NATO alliance, whether Turkey may or should rely on NATO capabilities in the frame of Article 5 of the NATO treaty or not. This is another very much interesting. But what personally I do think that Pandora box is half open already. So I'm pretty much sure, again, my personal opinion, but I'm pretty much sure that such ideas somehow already in mind of Turkish government. And another question, all of a sudden, Turkey purchased from Russia S-400 for their air defense purposes. Why did Turkey feel the need to buy air defense systems? Meanwhile, NATO actually should provide the security for all countries member of NATO. This is another topic. So just to come to my answer to your question, I think that Turkey somehow develops some technologies, at least of delivery of nuclear weapons, whenever Turkey would like to have nuclear bomb. Already somehow, as I said, Pandora box is opened. Not officially yet declared, but it is opened. So in this current situation in the region of the race of nuclear powers in the region, under certain circumstances, Turkey just will not have a chance to act in a different way, just to start its own program. This is the reality.
Murat, over the past couple of years, we've heard Russian President Vladimir Putin talk about nukes. We've heard Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talk about nukes. We've heard Kim Jong-un from North Korea talk about nukes. Now, over the past 70 to 80 years, the nuclear weapon has always been identified as a deterrent. Is the thinking around, or the identification around a nuclear weapon changing from a deterrent to an offensive weapon or a game changer, a war ender type of weapon?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. The discourse about nuclear deterrence has been changing and transforming since the end of the Cold War, but particularly after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the rhetoric has dramatically changed. And now we are talking about the return of strategic deterrence in terms of the nuclear capacity of the nuclear power. But still, we have the same doctrine. Yes, in terms of the rhetoric, there is a huge transformation. But in terms of the tactical, operational, and strategic usage of nuclear weapons, still we have the same doctrine in which different countries are gradually evolving their, doctrinal perspective. When we look at the potential strategic ramifications, I can say that many countries who have nuclear weapons are at the same point in terms of the possibility of nuclear usage. But there are many unknowns about the circumstances in which nuclear power may or can able to use nuclear weapons against their adversaries or competitors. I think there are ambiguities on this because still we have same logic in terms of mutually assured destruction. So no country would, dare to use nuclear weapons under the circumstances of the current, geopolitical conflicts. So therefore, still we are on the same page. We are on the same point, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will not change the perception of countries in the upcoming futures if the conflicts and the possibility of war between states will continue.
Luke, it's been 80 years since any country used a nuclear weapon, deployed it in the war theater. Could you see in the next 5 to 10 years a country using maybe a tactical low-yield nuke in a battlefield area or to wipe out military targets? Is the understanding changing?
I think under the current circumstances, it's unlikely to see this in the next several years. To use a tactical nuclear weapon on a battlefield and to reap the benefits of such a weapon requires you to have soldiers who are trained and equipped to operate in a contaminated environment, to operate in that hazardous environment so they can take advantage of the situation on the battlefield. Obviously, the only case where this might happen would be Russia inside Ukraine. And I just don't think that the Russian army is trained or equipped right now to operate in a radioactive environment. So I don't see the use of a tactical nuclear weapon bringing any benefits to Moscow. If anything, I think it could persuade or dissuade, I should say, some in the so-called global South to roll back some of their perceived support of Moscow in this conflict. So I don't think it's too likely. You can't rule out anything, of course. We saw this after February of 2022. Nothing can be ruled out. But I do think on balance, it's probably unlikely. Yusuf, if I may just on one quick point about Pandora's box being partially open, I agree with Ivan on that. I think there are two big reasons why this box is open, or at least partially open. One is Iran's proximity to breaking out and getting a nuclear weapon. Even though it's a member of NPT, I think that is one reason. And the second reason was the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, when in the 1990s, Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons with guarantees by several countries, including Russia, that its borders would be respected. And then, of course, we had the events of February of 2022, which tells me that if I'm a country thinking about getting nuclear weapons, or if I'm a country that has nuclear weapons, there's no way I'm giving them up now, because had Ukraine kept those weapons, I suspect the situation would have been slightly different in 2022.
Ivan, I was going to ask you a question, but do you want to address what Luke said first?
Yes, of course. If you go deeply into the story of Soviet Union and how it was dissolved, and about Ukrainian-Russian relations, and about Soviet Union, and about Soviet Union and NATO relations, and about promises of NATO, we will go so deeply into history. And first, which comes to my mind, is the promise of NATO for not extension towards Russia border, no one frontier whatsoever. So let's don't go further into such an issue. So who started, who stopped? Today, I do believe that the question is very much different. It's about what shall we do? The basic question, actually. What shall we do not to open this Pandora box totally and fully, not to cross this border? Because I think that we are all rational people. We understand that the last thing we need is just to open it fully. As I said, the story is a story, and it's much more complicated that Russia invaded just Ukraine all of a sudden whatsoever. So if you come to a point of Russia, I think, deliver very much logical foreign policy, and on the escalation ladder, they are going slow, very much slow. And I believe that Russia will not want to use nuclear weapon, not because there is no capabilities of using it or somehow operate it. No, not because of that. Because of rational and responsible foreign policy. And not all the steps in this ladder we passed to use nuclear weapon, I do believe. Because there are, let me say softly, there are different ladders, actually, and you may read between the words of President Putin, how does he see this ladder. And he said many times that he will not be the president who will use nuclear weapon. But as I said, we coming very much close to this border. And what an interesting fact! We come to it because of Israeli policy supported by the United States, not because of Russia. Let me speak very much simple and open.
Murat, if Turkey does develop nuclear weapons, which country would you expect the most pushback from?
Probably, if Turkey were to acquire nuclear weapons, of course, it would have profound and far-reaching consequences for the Middle East, NATO, and the international security. United States, of course, will not be happy about this, and other regional countries, of course, will not be happy about this and will not support Turkey's ambitions to acquire nuclear weapons. So NATO member, of course, will be against Turkey's sort of, potential acquiring nuclear weapon. So there are many countries, I think, in the regions that they will not happy about Turkey as a nuclear power.
Luke, would NATO or the United States move to block, whether it be via sanctions or any other type of diplomatic instruments, a Turkish nuclear program?
I agree with Murat that the U.S. Government probably wouldn't be thrilled by the idea, and many NATO's leaders would also not be happy with the hypothetical situation of Turkey developing nuclear weapons. So I think the best thing we could do to solve this problem is to restore trust and confidence between all members of NATO, and to rebuild that very important bilateral relationship between Turkey and the United States. If there wasn't a lack of confidence, a crisis in confidence inside NATO, there wouldn't be any question about NATO's nuclear umbrella extending to all of its members. So I think this is probably the cheapest, most direct, and the geopolitically most beneficial way to solve this question, to answer this question, if Turkey should or should not get nuclear weapons.
Ivan, we're running out of time. Last question to you. As a Russian, Turkey is a NATO member. If Turkey develops nuclear weapons, are you concerned?
Actually, the answer is very simple. No, Russia will not be concerned, because Turkey acts as a responsible player in the international arena. Turkey already got nuclear weapon, as we suppose. So, but it is not its own. It is NATO nuclear weapon. So I think we are mostly concerned about NATO's nuclear weapon at Turkish territory.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivan, Murat, Luke. Great conversation. I really enjoyed listening to you guys. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.